The first sacred wolf refused the king's plate before anyone remembered Orenna Hale had been banished. It happened in the middle of the victory feast, under 7 chandeliers of frozen moonfire, while nobles lifted gold cups and praised Lady Mirabel Thorn for bringing refinement at last to the Vael royal table. The long banquet hall glittered with silver meat, honeyed marrow, winter apples, glazed until they shone like rubies, and bread brushed with powdered gold. At the head of the hall, Alpha King Cedric Vael sat beneath the black wolf banners, still carrying the smell of battle beneath ceremonial fur and iron. His face was hard, beautiful, and tired, in a way no court song ever named. Behind his chair, 3 sacred table wolves waited to be fed. They were not ordinary beasts. Each was taller than a warhorse, moon-white along the shoulders, black along the spine, with eyes like old silver coins left in holy water. For generations, the sacred table wolves had eaten first from the royal feast. If they accepted the food, the victory was blessed. If they turned away, the pack did not sleep. Mirabel lifted the first golden plate herself. Moon-fed venison in pomegranate ash. She announced, her pearl sleeves falling perfectly around her wrists, prepared without smoke-stained hands, without common herbs, and without the old kitchen muddle that has burdened this court for too long. At her wrist, a small silver bowl of white hearth-salt remained untouched. Orenna's hearth-salt. Mirabel had ordered it removed from every platter before the wolves entered. Laughter moved politely down the noble tables. Cedric did not laugh, but he did not stop it either. The largest sacred wolf lowered its head to the plate. The hall held its breath. Then the wolf drew back. A growl rolled through the banquet stones. Not anger, hunger, deep wrong and widening. The second wolf turned from the golden bread. The third stepped away from the royal blood wine, so sharply its claws tore silver grooves into the floor. Mirabel's smile tightened. The wolves are still unsettled from battle. One of the beasts bent its massive head and scratched the floor. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound cut through the feast, harder than any scream. When the wolf stepped back, a mark had been carved into the banquet floor, a crescent spoon crossed with 3 small moons. The mark of the Vael Moon Kitchen. Orenna's mark. Silence fell so completely that Cedric heard the blood in his own ears. Then the sacred wolves began to starve in front of the court. Their ribs did not show, their bodies did not weaken, but their eyes hollowed with a hunger no meat could reach. Foam gathered at the mouth of the youngest wolf. The largest one shuddered, claws digging deeper into the floor as if it were holding itself back from the nobles seated nearest the dais. Cedric rose. Every cup in the hall stilled. "Where is Orenna Hale?" he asked. No one answered quickly enough. Mirabel lowered the golden plate. "Removed, my king. As you approved." Approved. The word returned to him like a dull blade. That morning, Orenna Hale had stood beside the banked ovens with flour on her sleeve and smoke in her grey-streaked hair, while Mirabel read the dismissal order aloud. Old recipes weakened royal wolves, Mirabel had said. Common herbs made victory look provincial. The moon kitchen needed refinement. Cedric had been fastening his battle cloak when the order came for his seal. Orenna had not begged. That had made it easier for him to call the matter small. He signed. Now the largest sacred wolf slammed its paw onto the banquet floor, and the old crescent spoon mark split wider through the polished stone. Cedric stepped down from the dais. The wolves turned their heads toward him, and for the first time in his reign they did not lower themselves before their alpha. They looked past him, toward the servant arch, toward the way back to the moon kitchen. A kitchen boy stumbled out from behind the curtain, white-faced and trembling. "My king," Cedric's gaze cut to him. "Speak." The boy swallowed. Mistress Orenna was put beyond the lower gate before sunset. The youngest sacred wolf gave a thin, terrible whine. Cedric's own wolf stirred under his skin. His throat closed around the royal wine he had not yet swallowed. For one breath, the meat before him smelled rich, perfect, and utterly dead. A hot, hollow ache opened beneath his ribs, old as the battlefields where Orenna had once fed him broth from a wooden spoon when he could barely lift his head. He remembered waking in a tent after the southern campaign, shaking with bloodlust, and Orenna's hand steady at his mouth. "Eat slow, my king. Victory leaves teeth in the body." He had forgotten the words. His body had not. Mirabel moved beside him. "I will send riders. She can be brought back long enough to correct whatever rustic imbalance she left behind." The largest sacred wolf snapped its head toward her. Mirabel went still. Cedric saw it then, not offense in the wolf's eyes. Recognition. As if the beast had scented the wrongness before any man in the hall had dared name it. "Left behind," Cedric said. Mirabel's fingers tightened around her pearl napkin. A kitchen woman dismissed in bitterness may fail to complete certain preparations. The accusation arrived, dressed as reason. Orenna had been gone for hours, yet Mirabel had already shaped the blame to fit her absence. Cedric looked toward the feast again. Silver meat untouched, golden bread refused, blood wine souring black in crystal cups, 3 sacred wolves starving before plates heavy enough to feed a court. Beside Mirabel's wrist, the untouched hearth-salt sat in its silver bowl, white as bone, useless because the hands that knew when to scatter it had been sent into the cold. Then the floor beneath the king's boots warmed, not from fire, from the kitchen mark. The crescent spoon carved by wolf claws glowed faintly blue, and an old rule burned around it in a ring of moonlight. The sacred table does not eat splendor, it eats balance. A murmur broke through the hall. Mirabel's face lost color for only a breath. Cedric saw. So did the wolves. The largest beast lowered its head to the glowing mark and breathed one word into the stone, not with a human voice, but with a hunger old enough to become one. "Orenna." Cedric turned to the guards. "Bring her back." The command cracked through the banquet hall, but the glowing mark on the floor darkened before anyone could move. A second line appeared beneath the first. "She may not be summoned as servant." And somewhere far below the royal feast in the cold road beyond the lower gate, Orenna Hale heard every kitchen bell in Vael Keep begin to ring her name. Every oven in the Vael Moon kitchen went cold the moment the king ordered Orenna Hale brought back as a servant. The change traveled upward before the guards reached the banquet doors. Fire died under iron grates. Steam vanished from copper pots. Dough collapsed in silver bowls as if breath had been taken out of it. Below the feast hall, the moon kitchen sealed itself with a sound like a heavy heart, refusing another command. In the banquet hall, the sacred wolves heard it. All 3 lifted their heads. The largest wolf stepped over the golden plate Mirabel had carried with such careful pride and placed one paw directly on Orenna's crescent spoon mark. Hunger still hollowed its eyes, but it did not scratch at the nobles. It did not leap for the meat. It did not bare its teeth at Cedric. It guarded the mark. Mirabel saw the court watching and recovered quickly. "This is exactly what I feared." Cedric turned toward her. She pointed at the glowing kitchen mark as if accusation could make it smaller. Orenna left a working in the food, a bitterness charm. Perhaps she expected insult. Perhaps she meant to shame the new household order before the allied pacts. The youngest sacred wolf snapped its jaws shut. The sound cracked through the hall. Mirabel took half a step back before pride stopped her. Cedric looked from her to the untouched bowl of white hearth-salt, still resting near her wrist. The salt had not been scattered across the plates. It had not touched the meat, the bread, the blood wine, or the marrow. It sat pure ceremonial, useless. "Who removed the hearth-salt?" he asked. Mirabel's answer came too smoothly. "I did." The old practice was unrefined. A silence opened. Even nobles who had laughed at smoke-stained hands knew enough not to laugh now. Cedric's own hunger twisted beneath his ribs, not for food but for balance. The royal wine on the table smelled sour. The venison looked perfect and dead. His wolf paced inside his skin, not wild yet, but close enough that his fingers curled against his palm. The largest sacred wolf lowered its head and breathed across the untouched hearth-salt. The white grains turned grey. Mirabel whispered. "No." Cedric heard her. So did the hall. One of the kitchen hands near the servant arch whispered through trembling lips, "Mistress Orenna always salted last. Not for taste, for quiet." Cedric's gaze cut to her. Quiet. The kitchen hand trembled. So Victory would not keep biting the wolves after they ate. The words passed through Cedric like an old spoon against a fevered mouth. "Eat slow, my king. Victory leaves teeth in the body." Mirabel lifted her chin. Common superstition. Kitchen servants make rituals from habit, so no one replaces them. The glowing mark on the floor brightened. A new line circled it. The moon kitchen is not a room behind the feast. It is the law beneath it. The banquet hall erupted. Some nobles rose. Others backed from their plates. One allied lord shoved his gold cup away as if the wine might bite. Mirabel moved fast. Too fast. She turned toward the servant arch and snapped, "Bring me the old recipe board." The one Hale kept above the ash ovens. If she left a charm, it will be written there. "No one goes below," Cedric said. Mirabel's ring flashed once beneath her sleeve. The steward had already moved before Cedric spoke, as if Mirabel's order had reached him before her voice did. The sacred wolves reacted at once. Not toward the steward, toward the kitchen. All three beasts slammed their paws onto Orenna's mark, and the banquet floor split in 3 thin blue lines, leading toward the lower stairs. From below came the roar of sealed ovens refusing flame, then a crash of wood striking stone. The steward stumbled back into the hall, clutching a long blackened board. Orenna's recipe board. Cedric had seen it 100 times without looking at it. A slab of dark kitchen wood, rubbed smooth by years of flour-dusted hands, hung above the moon kitchen ovens, marked not with elegant script, but with notches, moons, salt strokes, and small knife cuts where meals had been changed for wounded wolves, fevered guards, starving scouts, grieving widows, and kings too proud to admit they could not swallow. Mirabel reached for it. Burn it. The largest sacred wolf moved. The beast crossed the hall in one bound and placed itself between Mirabel and the board. Its lips lifted not fully just enough to reveal teeth long as carving knives. The steward dropped the board and fell to his knees. The board struck the floor, its old cuts filled with blue light. Names began to appear between the recipe marks. Not noble names. Hands. Mara, who cleaned ash from the east ovens. Pelin, who carried broth to the wounded barracks. Tessa, who ground moonroot until her palms split. Hale Orenna, who balanced victory hunger after every royal battle. The court stared. Cedric did not breathe. Orenna Hale did not leave the feast hungry. The feast left her nameless. Cedric looked at the board, the wolves, the dead perfect food, and the grey hearth-salt. Then he understood the first shape of the crime. Mirabel had not merely changed the menu. She had removed the hands from the rite and expected splendor to feed what care had kept alive. "Open the moon kitchen," he ordered. Below them, every cold oven struck once against its iron grate. No. A line burned across the banquet floor from Orenna's mark to the lower stairs. "She may not be fetched by hands that erased her." Mirabel's voice sharpened. "My king, this is rebellion from a kitchen." Cedric turned on her with enough force that even the sacred wolves stilled. "No," he said. "This is law answering after I ignored it." And for the first time that night, Cedric understood the wolves were not starving because Orenna had left. They were starving because he had signed away the hands that knew how to bring victory home. He stepped away from the dais. A guard moved to follow. Cedric lifted one hand. "No escort." "My king." I said no escort. The hunger beneath his ribs flared as he crossed the banquet hall. The sacred wolves did not follow him. They remained around the mark, starving but disciplined, as if waiting to see whether the Alpha King would understand the difference between summoning a servant and seeking the woman he had erased. The lower gate lay far beneath the feast hall, past the sealed moon kitchen, past the cold ovens, past corridors where kitchen bells rang without hands. Cedric descended through the sound of Orenna's name until the music became unbearable. He found her beyond the lower gate. Orenna Hale stood in the winter road with her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders, grey-streaked hair loosened by the windflower, still pale on one sleeve. Snow gathered on her hem. Beside her lay a small bundle wrapped in kitchen cloth and tied with plain string. She did not kneel. Cedric stopped before her, breathing harder than the stairs deserved. Orenna. Her face remained calm. That wounded him more than anger would have. "My king," she said. The title was correct. Nothing in it came back to him. "The wolves will not eat," he said. "I know. The moon kitchen has closed itself against me. It should have done so sooner." He swallowed. "Come back." Orenna looked past him toward the keep where bells still rang from every kitchen wall. "No." Cedric's jaw tightened, but he did not command. Orenna saw the restraint. She did not reward it. "If the king wants the wolves fed," she said, "he must first name the hands he erased." He stood in the snow with hunger burning through his royal blood and no throne between them. "What do you require?" he asked. Orenna lifted her worn wooden spoon from the bundle. "Not like a weapon, like proof of work. The moon kitchen will be named sacred law space before the court. Every servant who keeps the pack alive will be protected from noble removal. Hearth-salt returns to the table. No recipe board burns. No cook answers to refinement over balance." Cedric bowed his head once. "I will name it before them," he said. "Not as mercy, as law." "Not here," Orenna said. "Not to me alone." The kitchen bells stopped. From far above, inside the banquet hall, the crescent spoon mark burned so bright that every noble saw the next line carve itself into the floor. "Name the kitchen before asking it to feed the crown." Cedric returned to the banquet hall with snow melting on his shoulders. No crown shone brighter than that humiliation. The Alpha King had gone below the feast alone through corridors where cold ovens had struck their iron grates and kitchen bells had rung Orenna Hale's name. Now he came back by the servant passage while nobles sat before untouched splendor and pretended not to see the cold on his cloak. The sacred wolves lifted their heads. They were still starving. Their silver eyes had hollowed further, but none of them had broken discipline. The largest kept one paw over Orenna's crescent spoon mark, guarding it from polished shoes, golden plates, and every lie dressed as order. Mirabel Thorn stood beside the high table with her chin raised. The bowl of hearth-salt near her wrist had gone grey. Orenna's recipe board lay on the floor beneath the wolves' protection, its dark wood marked by years of knife cuts, moonstrokes, salt lines, and hands no noble record had ever praised. Cedric looked at the board first. Then he faced the court. The moon kitchen of Vael Keep is sacred law space. The hall froze. Cedric continued before anyone could turn shock into argument. Its rites are not household decoration. Its hearth-salt returns to the sacred table. Its recipe board is not to be burned, altered, hidden, or removed. No noble house may dismiss, replace, punish, or silence the hands who keep the pack alive. A murmur rose fast. He let it. The court needed to hear itself sound small. Mirabel stepped forward, pearl sleeves falling perfectly around her wrists. "My king, this is an extraordinary confession to make before allied packs. You elevate a kitchen above the crown in the middle of a victory feast. Our guests will call this weakness." Cedric turned to her. "No," he said. "They will call it late." The sacred wolves breathed out together. For one heartbeat, the grey hearth-salt flickered white. Mirabel saw it. Her eyes moved to the bowl, then back to the nobles. A king cannot be ruled by a woman who refuses to enter the hall she claims to serve, she said. Orenna Hale did not claim service, Cedric answered. She named law. She humiliated you. I humiliated the crown when I signed away the hands that kept it from hunger. Several nobles lowered their eyes. Near the servant arch, one of the kitchen hands covered her mouth with shaking fingers. Cedric made himself look at her. That, too, was part of the price. It was not enough to name law above the feast, while refusing to see those who had kept the feast alive. Mirabel recovered with dangerous grace. Then let law be satisfied, she said. If the moon kitchen must be honored, I have already prepared someone fit to oversee it properly. The side doors opened. A man entered in a spotless white apron, embroidered with silver vines. He had narrow hands, perfumed hair, and a ceremonial ladle hanging from a chain at his belt. Behind him came 2 stewards, carrying a covered silver tray. Mirabel lifted her voice. Master Alric Ven trained in the high kitchens of 3 noble courts. He will preserve the sacred appearance of the moon kitchen, while preventing any servant from using superstition to hold the royal table hostage. The sacred wolves did not growl. That was worse. They looked at Alric as if he were not food, not threat, not even worth hunger. Alric bowed. My king, I can prepare a correction course at once. Refined marrow with clarified moonwine pearl flour and controlled salt dust. The wolves will accept proper balance when it is presented without panic. Orenna's recipe board went dark. Mirabel smiled. See, she said softly. The charm fades when skilled hands arrive. The largest sacred wolf removed its paw from the crescent spoon mark. For one terrible breath, the nobles relaxed. Then the wolf walked to Alric's silver tray. The stewards lifted the cover. Inside lay 3 perfect portions of white meat, arranged in the shape of crescent moons. Each piece was dusted with glittering salt that had never known ash broth injury or hunger. It was beautiful enough for a painting. Cedric's own hunger twisted beneath his ribs. The meat smelled rich, clean, and empty. The wolf lowered its head. Mirabel's eyes brightened. Then the sacred beast exhaled over the tray. The silver blackened. The perfect meat shriveled inward as if burned by invisible flame. The salt dust turned to ash and lifted in a thin grey spiral. Beneath it, something oily and dark shone against the tray. A kitchen hand whispered bitterroot. The hall recoiled. Alric's hand tightened around his ceremonial ladle. Mirabel's hand moved toward her sleeve. Cedric's voice cut through the room. Stop! She froze. The largest sacred wolf turned its hollow silver eyes on her. Hunger still held the beast by the throat, but another thing had begun to wake beneath it. Rage. Cedric stepped between Mirabel and the wolf. Not to protect her innocence. To keep the sacred beast from paying the price for a human crime. What is bitterroot doing under a feast tray, he asked. Mirabel's smile did not return. For the first time that night, refinement had nothing graceful left to say. The recipe board answered instead. Bitterroot barred, after southern campaign. Cedric Vael fed by Orenna Hale, until the wolf heat passed. Cedric stared at the words. He remembered blood on his teeth, broth at his mouth, and Orenna's hand steadying the spoon when his own claws would not retract. He had called that care ordinary. He had signed it away, and now every noble in the hall knew the king had survived on the hand he dismissed. Mirabel spoke quickly. Old kitchen boards can be altered. The board burned brighter. Hearth-hand record cannot be written by unused hands. Alric's hand loosened around the ceremonial ladle. It struck the floor before he could pretend he had not known. Cedric lifted the grey hearth-salt and set it beside Orenna's mark. Name the hands, he said. One by one, the kitchen servants spoke. Mara, ash ovens, Pelin, wounded broth, Tessa, moonroot. More names followed from the servant arch, quiet at first, then steadier, until the royal feast carried the voices of those who had fed it for years without being named. When the last name faded, the hearth-salt turned white again. The sacred wolves bent toward it, then stopped. Across Orenna's crescent spoon mark, one final line burned blue-white. The hands are named. The one erased must name the balance. Orenna Hale entered the victory feast through the servant arch, and every noble who had laughed at smoke-stained hands forgot how to breathe. She had not changed her dress. Snow still clung to the hem of her dark wool skirt. Flour marked one sleeve. Smoke had settled into the grey streaks of her hair, and in her right hand she carried the same worn wooden spoon she had taken with her beyond the lower gate. No jewel brightened her throat. No royal guard announced her. The kitchen bells did. One clear note rang from somewhere below the feast hall, then another, until the sound moved through the walls, like the keep itself, naming the woman the court had tried to send away. Cedric stood beside Orenna's crescent spoon mark with the white hearth-salt at his feet. He did not command her forward. That was the first thing she noticed. His shoulders were rigid with hunger and shame, but he waited until she reached the edge of the hall. Then he inclined his head before the court that had watched him return by the servant passage. "Orenna Hale," he said, voice carrying under the black wolf, "Banner's keeper of the Vale Moon kitchen. Will you enter sacred law space and name the balance?" A whisper moved through the nobles. Keeper, not cook, not servant, not woman of the lower rooms. Orenna looked at him for one measured breath. "I will enter to inspect what was broken, not to feed what has not yet confessed." Cedric accepted the wound. Then inspect. She stepped fully into the hall. The sacred wolves lowered their heads at once, not to her feet, to the wooden spoon in her hand. The gesture passed through the court like a storm no one could outrun. The wolves did not eat. They did not relax. Hunger still hollowed their silver eyes, and the youngest shook with the effort of remaining still. But the moment Orenna entered, their rage bent into discipline. Mirabel Thorn's smile had returned thinner now, a touching performance. The wolves remember habit. Orenna did not look at her. Wolves remember what keeps them alive. She walked first to the hearth-salt. The bowl sat beside the glowing kitchen mark white again, after the servants had named their hands. Orenna crouched, touched 2 fingers to the rim, then rubbed the salt between her thumb and forefinger. Cedric watched her hands. He remembered those hands steadying a spoon at his mouth, while his own claws would not retract. Orenna felt his stare and did not soften for it. This salt was returned too late, she said. Mirabel lifted her chin. It was present all evening. Present is not the same as used. The recipe board glowed faintly as if approving the difference. Orenna moved to the blackened silver tray, where Alric's perfect white meat had collapsed over the bitterroot oil. Master Alric stood nearby, face pale, ceremonial ladle hanging useless from his chain. He bowed too deeply when she approached. "Mistress Hale," he said. "No," Orenna answered without looking at him. "Do not borrow respect after lending your hands to harm." The ladle chain trembled against his apron. Orenna bent over the tray. Bitterroot beneath refined marrow, salt dust without hearth. Moon wine clarified until it forgets blood. She straightened. This was not a mistake. Mirabel's voice sharpened. "Careful. Accusing noble kitchen science of malice because it differs from your old methods only proves why oversight was needed." Orenna finally turned to her. "Your oversight made hunger." A low growl moved through the largest wolf. Orenna lifted the wooden spoon slightly. The wolf stilled. Cedric saw it. So did the court. Not queenhood, not magic spectacle. Craft recognized by beasts that had survived because of it. Orenna looked back at Cedric. "Read the law again." His face tightened. "Before them," she said. He understood. The first declaration had been his repair. This one had to be record. Cedric faced the court, the allied lords, the servants near the arch Mirabel Alric and the starving wolves. "The moon kitchen of Vael Keep is sacred law space," he said. "No noble house may remove its hands, for refinement, rank, beauty, punishment, or convenience. Hearth-salt belongs to the sacred table. Recipe boards are hearth hand record. Any feast served to sacred wolves without balance rite is unlawful. Orenna listened without expression. She did not ask for apology. She asked for law. Mirabel stepped forward before the silence could settle. And there it is. The crown starves before a kitchen woman until she extracts authority. You call this sacred order. I call it coercion. She lets the wolves suffer so the court will kneel to her spoon. Several nobles seized the word with hungry relief. Coercion sounded cleaner than guilt. Orenna looked at the sacred wolves, then at the ruined feast, then at Mirabel's pearl sleeves. Hunger began when you removed balance, she said. Not when I named it. The crescent spoon mark burned blue-white. The recipe board did not speak. Orenna was glad. Some truths needed living mouths. She returned to the hearth-salt bowl and scattered one pinch over the banquet floor, not the food. The salt hissed where it touched the stone, then slid in 3 thin white lines toward the wolves. They bent toward it, trembling. Mirabel's fingers moved. Orenna saw the movement because kitchen work had trained her to notice small thefts. A pinch too much salt, a flame lowered too soon, a hand hiding what should have been shared. Stop, Orenna said. Mirabel froze. Cedric turned. Orenna walked to her slowly. Lift your sleeve. Mirabel laughed. You forget yourself. No, Orenna said. I remember what you removed. Cedric's voice came low. Lift it. Mirabel's pearl sleeve trembled. When she raised her wrist, something white spilled from inside the embroidered cuff and fell in a bright scatter across the black banquet floor. Not grey salt, not court salt, true hearth salt. Orenna's hearth salt. The sacred wolves rose as one, and the crescent spoon mark carved a final line between Mirabel's feet. Balance was stolen before the feast began. The stolen hearth salt did not scatter like seasoning. It fell like evidence. White grains struck the black banquet floor between Mirabel's pearl slippers, bright against the stone, too pure to be court salt, too awake to be accident. Every sacred wolf lifted its head. Their hollow silver eyes fixed on the spill, and hunger ran through their bodies so violently the youngest beast trembled from shoulder to paw. Orenna did not move quickly. Kitchen work had taught her that panic ruined what hunger had not. No one touches it, she said. No guard questioned her. No servant reached down. Even Cedric stood still, though his own wolf dragged against his ribs at the scent of true balance. The stolen salt made the royal wine smell sharper, the golden bread sweeter, the dead perfect meat more rotten beneath its polish. Mirabel lowered her sleeve with care. A ridiculous display. Salt catches in fabric. I handled the bowl before the feast. You ordered it removed from every platter, Orenna said. I ordered excess removed. You hid the part that still carried hearth. Mirabel's smile returned in a thinner shape. Or perhaps I preserved what you might have corrupted. You were dismissed bitterly. You had every reason to leave poison under the name of balance. The nobles seized the suggestion with visible relief. Poison was easier than guilt. Cedric heard the shift and stepped forward. You had true hearth salt on your person, while the sacred wolves starved. Mirabel turned to him. And she had a closed kitchen, a magical floor mark, and beasts refusing royal food until her authority was raised above the court. Ask yourself who benefits more. The words were clever. They did not reach Orenna. She crouched and touched one finger to the spilled salt. The grain warmed against her skin, then glowed faintly blue. True hearth salt does not hide harm, she said. It remembers the hand that withheld it. She pressed the glowing grain to the crescent spoon mark. The mark flared. Not with words at first, with heat. A circle of moonlight spread from Orenna's finger to Mirabel's feet, then to the silver bowl, then outward beneath the banquet tables. Wherever the light touched a platter, the beautiful feast revealed what polish had concealed. A dark sheen beneath the venison, a bitter thread under the marrow, a faint oily ring around the blood wine. Orenna stood. There is bitter root in more than Alric's correction tray. The hall recoiled from its own feast. Master Alric's face went grey. Mirabel did not look at him. That was answer enough. Cedric's voice dropped. How many plates? Orenna looked across the long royal table. Enough to start hunger. Not enough to be seen by a noble tongue. The wolves would refuse. The court would panic. Then someone would say the old kitchen woman left a curse behind. A sacred wolf growled. Orenna lifted the wooden spoon. The growls stopped, but the beast's claws sank deeper into the stone. Mirabel's eyes flashed. You speak as though you know guilt because you planned the accusation first. Orenna looked at her at last. No. I know kitchens. I know when harm is hidden under garnish. I know when a hand wants the blame to arrive after the body breaks. Cedric turned toward Mirabel. Did you order bitterroot placed under the feast? Do not ask me like a servant spilling broth, Mirabel snapped, polish cracking. I supervised refinement. I did not grind roots. Orenna looked at Alric. The noble kitchen master swallowed. His hand loosened around the empty ladle chain. Master Alric Orenna, said who supplied the bitterroot. Mirabel's ring flashed beneath her sleeve. Alric's eyes dulled for one breath, as if a command passed through him. Cedric saw it this time. So did Orenna. She struck the floor once with the wooden spoon. Not hard. Enough. The crescent spoon mark sent a blue line across the stone and snapped around Alric's wrist. He gasped as the ring command broke. Thorn household stores, he said. Mirabel went still. The sacred wolves rose. Orenna did not let them move. Stay. They stayed. The court saw it. Cedric saw it. Orenna wished they did not look so surprised that discipline could come from care instead of fear. Mirabel's voice lowered. You enjoy this. Orenna's face remained calm. No, I am tired. The sentence silenced the hall more thoroughly than anger. She turned to Cedric. The wolves cannot eat from this feast. His jaw tightened. Then what do you need? Not what. Who? The kitchen hands near the servant arch straightened before she looked at them. Mara, Pelin, Tessa, others whose names still trembled from being spoken before nobles for the first time. Orenna held Cedric's gaze. Do not bring me back to the room that erased me. Name the hands before asking them to save the feast. I named them. You let them speak. Now protect them with your mouth. Cedric understood the difference. He faced the court. Mara of the ash ovens, Pelin of wounded broth, Tessa of moonroot, and every hand named by the moon kitchen stand under my law. Any noble who threatens removes, punishes, buys, or silences them, answers to the crown. Orenna listened. Then she nodded once. Not forgiveness. Recognition of one correct step. She lifted the white hearth-salt and scattered 3 grains before the sacred wolves. They bent toward it. For the first time all night their mouths opened without rage. Then the salt turned black. Orenna's hand froze. Cedric's eyes cut to her. Mirabel's expression flickered too quickly for innocence. The largest sacred wolf backed away from the blackened salt, shaking with hunger. Orenna looked beneath the royal table. There, tied under the carved edge where no guest would see it, hung a small thorn-bound pouch, dripping bitter oil onto the stone. The crescent spoon mark burned blue-white. The feast was poisoned from below. The thorn-bound pouch dripped once. A single black bead of bitter oil fell from beneath the royal table and struck the banquet stone. The sacred wolves recoiled as if a blade had entered the room. Orenna lifted her wooden spoon before any guard could reach for the pouch. No one cuts it. The command stopped 3 armed men where the king's command might have made them move faster. Cedric saw that. So did Mirabel. Orenna crossed to the high table and knelt on the cold floor. The nobles shifted uneasily above her, uncomfortable now that the woman they had dismissed was close enough to see what had been hidden beneath their polished plates. She did not look up at them. Her attention stayed on the pouch, tied under the carved edge, wrapped in black thorn thread, swollen with oil its knot, placed where warmth from the feast lamps would make it leak slowly. Bitterroot alone sharpens hunger, she said. Thorn oil carries it through scent. Under the table it rises without being tasted. Cedric's face darkened, so the wolves were poisoned by the air, by the feast pretending to be clean. Mirabel gave a tight laugh, a dramatic way to describe kitchen smoke. Orenna touched the stone beneath the pouch. The black oil had formed a thin circle no wider than a coin, but inside it, the banquet floor was trembling. This was placed before the first plate was served. Master Alric looked away. Cedric noticed. How many Alric swallowed? I was told 3. Mirabel's gaze cut to him. He flinched. Orenna did not. 1 for each sacred wolf. A low sound moved through the beasts. Not rage yet. Pain. The youngest wolf lowered its head until its nose nearly touched the floor, but it did not cross Orenna's mark. Hunger shook through its shoulders. Foam gathered again at its mouth. Orenna's hand tightened around the spoon. Cedric stepped toward the wolf. No, she said. He stopped. The word landed between them without ceremony. A king halted before his starving sacred beast, because the woman he had banished knew what the beast needed more than he did. Orenna softened nothing. Do not comfort hunger you helped unleash. Cedric took the wound in silence. Mirabel seized it. You hear her. She speaks to the crown as if the feast belongs to her. Orenna rose. No. I speak as if the harm does. The recipe board glowed once from across the hall, but it did not write. Good. This truth did not need wood to carry it. Orenna turned to the kitchen hands near the servant arch. Mara, bring ashcloth. Pellin cold broth without salt. Tessa moonroot, unground. No flame. They moved at once. No one asked permission from Mirabel. No one looked to Alric. Cedric saw the room shift by inches. Not rebellion. Recognition. The hands of the kitchen knew where to stand when the feast finally admitted it was wounded. Mirabel's voice sharpened. If they touch the royal table without noble oversight, they stand under my law, Cedric said. This time, he said it before Orenna had to ask. She glanced at him once. It was not forgiveness. It was record. Mara brought the ashcloth. Orenna wrapped it around her fingers and loosened the thorn knot without breaking it. The pouch shivered like a living thing. Bitter scent thickened in the hall, and Cedric's wolf surged beneath his skin. His teeth ached. His hands curled. For one breath, every plate on the table smelled not dead but necessary. Meat, blood, salt, bone, victory. Then Orenna struck the floor once with the spoon. Cedric inhaled hard. The hunger broke its teeth against the sound. He looked at her, shaken. She did not look back. Battle hunger answers rhythm before command. A silence followed. That was another thing he had never known because he had never had to know it. Someone else had known it for him. Someone else had stood between his wolf and madness with broth, salt, ash, and timing. Orenna placed the loosened pouch into the empty silver bowl where Mirabel's grey hearth-salt had sat earlier. The bowl blackened around it. 2 more, she said. The kitchen hands moved under the side tables. Within moments, 2 more thorn-bound pouches were found, each tied beneath the places where the sacred wolves would scent before eating. The nobles nearest those tables stumbled back, faces pale. Mirabel remained still, too still. Orenna saw it. You knew there were 3, she said. Mirabel's smile was thin. Your hired master said 3. No, Orenna said. You did not look surprised when the second was found. Cedric turned toward Mirabel. She lifted her chin. I supervised a feast. I did not crawl beneath tables. Orenna lifted the first pouch from the bowl with the ash cloth. The thorn thread around it had begun to loosen. Beneath the black wrapping, something pale showed through. Not cloth. Parchment. Orenna peeled it free. The haul leaned inward. The strip was narrow, oil-stained and stamped with a broken crescent seal. Cedric knew the seal before anyone named it. His dismissal order. The same order that had removed Orenna Hale from the Moon Kitchen. The same order he had signed while fastening his battle cloak. Orenna read the line written beneath his mark. Old hearth materials released to Thorn household for refinement disposal. The words hung in the air like smoke. Mirabel spoke quickly. A standard transfer clause. Orenna looked at Cedric. Your seal opened the stores. His face went pale. The sacred wolves turned their hollow eyes on him. The floor beneath Orenna's mark burned blue-white. The hands were erased. The balance was sold under royal seal. Cedric did not reach for the oil-stained parchment. He looked at his own seal, as if it had become a blade left in the hand of someone he had trusted. The broken crescent mark glowed faintly beneath the black bitterroot stain, royal and undeniable. Around the high table, nobles held themselves very still, the way people did when guilt had not chosen a single throat yet. The sacred wolves stared at Cedric. That was worse than accusation. Their hunger had begun to tremble through the banquet hall in waves. Cups rattled. Silver forks shook against untouched plates. The youngest wolf lowered itself to the floor, not in obedience, but to keep from lunging at the poisoned scent still hanging under the table. Orenna folded the parchment once. Not neatly, not gently. The balance was not only removed, she said, it was transferred. Mirabel's voice came quickly. By royal order. Cedric turned toward her. She did not retreat. Now that his seal had appeared, her fear had changed shape. She could not deny the theft, so she placed it at the king's feet and dressed herself in procedure. You signed it, she said. Old hearth materials were released for refinement disposal. I did not steal what the crown surrendered. Cedric's jaw tightened. I signed a dismissal. You signed the household order attached to it. The words struck clean. Orenna watched him take the wound. He did not deny it. That mattered. It did not absolve him. What was taken, he asked. Orenna looked at the 3 thorn-bound pouches lying in the blackened silver bowl. Hearth-salt, ash cloth, moonroot measures, old broth stones. The smoked bones used to quiet battle hunger. Anything that remembered how victory enters a wolf's body. A noble lord frowned. Bones and cloth are kitchen scraps. The largest sacred wolf lifted its head. The lord stopped speaking. Orenna looked at him. Scraps are what the full call the things that kept them fed. The recipe board glowed once but wrote nothing. Cedric faced the court. Bring the attached household order. Mirabel's ring flashed beneath her sleeve. No steward moved. Cedric saw it. His voice dropped. Now, one of the kitchen hands stepped forward from the servant arch before any noble servant could obey. Mara of the ash ovens. Her hands were still dark at the nails from work the court had never praised. I know where she sent the copy, Mara said. Mirabel's eyes cut to her. You will remember your place. Mara shook once, then steadied. Orenna taught us. Our place was where hunger could not cross. Orenna did not look back at her, but something in her shoulders changed. Not softness. Recognition, Cedric said. Fetch it. Mara vanished through the servant arch. The sacred wolves remained still, but the air worsened. Bitterroot had entered the lamps, the table, heat, the wine steam. Cedric's own wolf pressed against his skin until his vision sharpened at the edges. The veins in his hands darkened under the strain. Orenna saw. Of course, she saw. She took the cold broth Pelin had brought and set it near him, not in his hand. "Do not drink unless I say," she said. A king might have resented the order. Cedric only nodded. Mirabel laughed softly. "There. The crown waits for permission to swallow. Is this the sacred order you wanted, my king?" "No," Cedric said, eyes still on the broth. "This is the cost of having ignored it." The answer silenced several smiles before they fully formed. Mara returned with a narrow ledger board wrapped in grey cloth. She placed it beside Orenna's recipe board and stepped back. Orenna untied the cloth. The household order inside bore Cedric's seal at the bottom, Mirabel's refinement mark in the margin, and a list written in a hand too elegant for kitchen work. Released to Thorn household white hearth-salt winter stores, moonroot ground and unground, ashcloth rolls, South Campaign broth stones, old wolf bone smoke bundle. Orenna read every item aloud. Each word made the wolves' hunger sharpen. Cedric gripped the edge of the table until the wood groaned. Mirabel said those materials were obsolete. If Alric misused them, Alric did not have the authority to remove them, Orenna said. "You did." Mirabel smiled with dangerous calm. "Under the king's seal." Orenna looked at Cedric. The whole hall did. Cedric stepped to the center of the banquet floor beside the crescent spoon mark his wolves had carved because he had not listened soon enough. "My seal opened the stores," he said. The sentence cost him. Orenna heard it in the iron under his voice. He turned toward the kitchen hands. "My neglect allowed the moon kitchen to be stripped." Then he faced the nobles. "Any order bearing my seal against sacred balance is void from this hour." Mirabel's eyes sharpened. "You cannot void the past." "No," Cedric said, "but I can stop hiding inside it." The crescent spoon mark burned blue. For one breath, the sacred wolf's hunger eased. Only one. Then the youngest wolf jerked upright with a broken snarl. The thorn pouches in the silver bowl split open by themselves. Black oil spilled across the hearth-salt, and beneath the oil 3 small bone charms rolled onto the floor. Each was carved with a thorn crest and wrapped in strands of moonroot. Orenna went very still. Cedric saw her face and felt dread move colder than hunger. Mirabel whispered, "That is not mine." Orenna lifted one charm with the ashcloth. "It is worse than bitterroot," she said. The largest sacred wolf backed away from the royal table for the first time. The recipe board gave a single blue flare. Orenna read the old cut that had opened across its center. Feral hunger was not meant to start tonight. It was meant to be blamed on the woman already banished. The bone charm was warm in Orenna's ash-clothed hand. That was the first wrongness. Bone taken clean from a dead creature stayed cold under kitchen law. Bone smoked for broth held warmth only when cooled by fire. But this small charm carved with the thorn crest and wrapped in moonroot strands pulsed like something waiting inside a wound. The sacred wolves backed from it. Not far. They were too hungry to retreat, but each beast lowered its body, as if the charm had teeth. Cedric's voice came low. "What is it?" Orenna did not answer at once. She turned the charm once in the ashcloth and studied the way bitter oil clung to the grooves. A delay knot. Mirabel laughed too quickly. "Kitchen words." "No," Orenna said. "War words." The hall quieted. Orenna placed the charm on the silver tray Alric had brought and touched it with 1 grain of true hearth-salt. The charm hissed. A black line uncoiled from the thorn crest and crawled across the tray like smoke. "Bitterroot wakes hunger," Orenna said. "Moonroot carries it through the blood. Thorn oil hides it in scent. But a delay knot waits. It does not break the wolf at first taste." She looked at Mirabel. "It breaks later." Cedric understood before the court did. His face hardened. After Orenna was gone, he said. The recipe board glowed once. Orenna nodded. "After the feast. After the wolves had eaten enough to appear blessed. After nightfall, when hunger turned wrong inside them and no moon kitchen hand remained with authority to stop it." Mirabel's eyes sharpened. You are inventing a crime out of kitchen scraps. The largest wolf growled. Orenna lifted her spoon. It stopped. She hated that every noble watched the gesture as if discipline had become magic only because a woman held it. They had seen fear command beasts all their lives. They did not know what to do with care that could do the same. Cedric looked at the 3 charms, and when the wolves turned, Orenna's mouth tightened. The court would say the old kitchen woman left poison before she was removed. Mirabel spread her hands. Convenient again that every danger points away from her. No, Cedric said. It points toward the order I signed and the house that received the stores. Mirabel turned on him. You would condemn a noble house on the word of a board and a spoon. Orenna stepped between them before Cedric could answer. Do not make this about belief. Balance has witnesses. She carried the charm to the crescent spoon mark and set it at the center. The mark flared blue-white. For one heartbeat, the feast hall vanished into reflected moonlight. The court saw not memory, not a ghost, not a goddess, but the simple path of handled things, hearth-salt lifted from Moon Kitchen stores, passed to Thorn servants split into 3 portions, moonroot stripped from its measure cords, bitterroot oil painted under trays, bone charms tied beneath the royal table. Mirabel's ring flashing once each time, a steward moved before her voice finished speaking. Alric dropped to his knees. Mirabel did not. That was her strength and her ugliness both. She could stand inside exposure and still look for a cleaner angle. My ring commands my household, she said. That is not a crime. It is when your household poisons sacred wolves, Cedric answered. Your seal released the materials. Yes, he said. The admission took the room from her for one breath. Cedric stepped beside Orenna's mark, not in front of it. My seal opened what should have been protected. My neglect made room for your hand. Mirabel's face tightened. Orenna did not look at him, but she heard the difference. He was not asking her to soften the truth. He was making himself part of it. The youngest sacred wolf whined. The sound broke through every court silence. Orenna turned at once. Hunger had reached the beast's eyes, fully now turning the silver thin and bright. Its body shook with the strain of obedience. The delay knots had not been meant to wait much longer. Cedric took 1 step. Orenna stopped him with the spoon. Not command, she said. Rhythm. He swallowed. Tell me. The hall heard him. So did Orenna. Tell me. Not fix it. Not come back. Not serve. Tell me. She pointed to the cold broth Pellin had brought. 3 bowls. No salt yet. Mara ash cloth under each. Tessa split the moonroot by hand, not blade. The kitchen hands moved. Mirabel's voice cut through. If they feed the wolves now, they destroy evidence. Orenna did not turn. If we do not begin balance now, there will be bodies instead of evidence. Cedric faced the guards. No one interferes. Mirabel smiled thinly. So the king chooses the kitchen over law. The Moon Kitchen is law. The words came from Cedric. But the mark burned under Orenna's feet. 3 bowls were placed before the sacred wolves. Orenna knelt not to the court, not to the king, but to the work. She touched the spoon once to each bowl, then paused. Her hand hovered over the true hearth-salt. Cedric saw the pause. What is wrong? Orenna looked at the salt. Then, at the old recipe board. Balance cannot be named in a feast hall built over theft. The sacred wolves shuddered. The bowls trembled. Orenna stood slowly. They cannot eat here. Mirabel's eyes flashed. Then she withholds food again. No, Orenna said. I refuse to feed sacred hunger on poisoned stone. She turned toward the servant arch. The wolves must come to the Moon Kitchen. The hall recoiled. Sacred table wolves had never left a royal feast before blessing it. Cedric looked at the beasts, then at Orenna. Will the kitchen open? Orenna held the wooden spoon tighter. It will open to named hands. She looked at him. And to a king, only if he carries what he signed away. Cedric, did not ask what she meant. He already knew. He walked to the recipe board, lifted the heavy blackened wood in both arms, and carried it toward the servant arch before the whole court. The sacred wolves followed, still starving, still shaking, still disciplined. At the arch, the crescent spoon mark burned one final line behind them. The feast cannot be saved above. The balance must be restored below. The moon kitchen opened for the recipe board before it opened for the king. Cedric felt the insult in his bones and knew it was deserved. He carried the blackened board down the servant passage with both arms, its old wood heavy against his chest, its knife cuts glowing faintly blue where the named hands had answered. Behind him came the sacred table wolves, still shaking with hunger, their claws scraping the stone in slow, disciplined steps. Behind them came Orenna Hale with her wooden spoon, and behind her came the kitchen hands, who had finally been named before the feast they had kept alive. Mirabel followed last. No one had invited her. That did not stop her. The moon kitchen stood below the banquet hall, vast and low-ceilinged, built of black stone warmed for centuries by ovens, broth fires, ash pits, and moonlight wells set into the floor. Every oven was cold. Every hanging pan hung still. The long preparation tables stood bare, as if the kitchen itself refused to pretend nothing had happened. Orenna stopped at the threshold. Cedric stopped too. He did not enter before her. The kitchen bells gave one low note. Orenna looked at the named hands. Mara. Mara stepped forward with ash cloth folded across both palms. Pelin. Pelin brought the cold broth. Tessa. Tessa held the moonroot split by hand, pale and fragrant under the blue light. Only then did Orenna cross the threshold. The moon kitchen warmed by one breath. Not enough for fire. Enough to acknowledge her. Cedric remained outside, still holding the board. Orenna turned. Set it where it belongs. He carried the board to the empty place above the ash ovens. The hook there had been torn from the wall when Mirabel's steward dragged it away. Cedric saw the splintered wood, the missing peg, the small scar left by years of use. Another thing he had never noticed until Damage named it. He set the board against the wall with both hands. The board did not glow. Orenna said nothing. Cedric understood. He took the oil-stained dismissal order from his coat and placed it beneath the board. The kitchen bells rang once. Still not enough. Mirabel's voice cut from the passage. A moving ritual, but the wolves are dying while she arranges symbols. Orenna did not turn. Symbols did not poison them. Orders did. Cedric looked at the parchment. His seal sat at the bottom dark and clean, as if ink could remain innocent because the hand had not read closely enough. He faced the kitchen. My seal removed Orenna Hale from the moon kitchen, he said. My seal released hearth materials to Thorn hands. My seal made refinement stronger than balance. The oven stayed cold. Orenna looked at him, and the word struck harder than judgment. Cedric lowered his head. I called the matter small because the work was done below stairs. The ash ovens breathed. A faint line of heat moved through the grates. Orenna's face did not soften. Again, he looked up, before the named hands, before the wolves, before Mirabel, who waited for any weakness to turn into mockery. Cedric spoke louder. The kitchen had fed kings longer than the court had praised them. I forgot that because I was full. The first oven ember woke. The sacred wolves bent their heads toward it, trembling. Orenna took the cold broth from Pelin and poured it into 3 black bowls. Mara laid ash cloth beneath each. Tessa placed moonroot beside them, not inside. Mirabel's ring flashed beneath her sleeve. A nearby Thorn steward stepped forward. The largest wolf turned. Cedric's hand went to his sword. Orenna struck the table once with her spoon. Everyone stopped. Not from fear, from rhythm. Take off the ring, she said. Mirabel smiled. You command noble jewelry now, no, Orenna said. I name the hand that kept moving before its voice. Cedric faced Mirabel. Remove it. She hesitated one breath too long. That was enough. Mara stepped forward and opened her ashcloth. The cloth caught a faint line of silver light, running from Mirabel's ring to the Thorn steward's wrist. The kitchen hands recoiled. Mirabel's face hardened. Household obedience is not poison. Orenna looked at the 3 hungry wolves. It was when it carried poison under the table. Cedric removed the ring himself. Not gently. Mirabel gasped as the silver band left her finger. The Thorn steward collapsed to his knees, blinking as if waking from smoke. Orenna placed the ring beside the dismissal order. No commanded hand enters balance. The recipe board finally lit, not brightly. Enough. Orenna began. She did not cook like courtmasters performed. She moved like someone answering a body in pain. Ash cloth under the bowls. One breath over the broth. Moonroot broken smaller by thumb, not blade. Hearth-salt lifted only after the steam rose. The sacred wolves watched every motion. Cedric watched too. He had seen battles less precise. When Orenna scattered the first grain of salt, the kitchen warmed fully. The ovens lit blue-white. The bitter scent, thinning in the wolf's breath, began to break. She held the first bowl, then stopped. Cedric felt the pause. What is wrong? Orenna looked at him. The balance was sold under royal seal. His throat tightened, so the first bowl must be carried by the hand that signed. The room went still. Mirabel whispered, "A king feeding wolves like a penitent servant." Orenna's eyes did not leave Cedric. No, a king carrying back what he sent away. Cedric took the bowl. It burned his palms. The largest sacred wolf lowered its head but did not drink. Cedric knelt. The hall above might have called it shame. The moon kitchen called it position. He held the bowl steady while the wolf drank once. Only once. The beast shuddered. Silver returned to its eyes. The second wolf drank from the bowl Orenna placed into Cedric's hands. Then, the third. When the youngest swallowed every oven flame bent toward Orenna's spoon, the recipe board burned blue-white. Balance restored below. Then the dismissal order beneath it blackened at the edges. A final line appeared across the board. The feast may return. Above only when the erasure is voided before all who ate from it. The dismissal order curled black beneath the recipe board before Cedric could touch it. Not burned away. Not forgiven. Marked. Orenna watched the royal seal darken at its edges, then fold inward like a mouth finally forced to swallow its own words. Around her, the moon kitchen breathed with restored heat. Blue-white flames moved inside the ovens. The 3 sacred table wolves stood steadier now, silver returning to their eyes, hunger no longer clawing wild through their bodies. But none of them turned toward the stairs. Not yet. Cedric understood before anyone spoke. The wolves had been balanced below. The feast had not been cleansed above. He lifted the blackened dismissal order. It left ash on his fingers. Orenna saw him look at the stain. Good. Some marks should remain long enough to teach the hand. Mirabel stood at the threshold, stripped of her ring, her pearl composure cracked but not gone. "You have fed the wolves," she said. "The court has its blessing. Must the crown now perform another humiliation for kitchen satisfaction?" Orenna turned to her. "You still mistake repair for humiliation." Cedric looked at the named hands, Mara, Pelin, Tessa, and the others who had followed Orenna below. Then he looked at Orenna. "Will you come above?" She held his gaze. "Not as servant. No, not as proof that your apology is complete. No, not to make the nobles comfortable." Cedric lowered his head once, as keeper of the balance they ate from and tried to erase. The moon kitchen bells rang one low note. Orenna picked up her wooden spoon. "Then go first," she said. "Carry the order." Cedric obeyed. The return to the banquet hall was slower than the descent. The Alpha King climbed the servant stairs with the blackened dismissal order in one hand and ash on his fingers. Behind him walked Orenna, then the kitchen hands, then the sacred table wolves. They did not move like beasts returning to a feast. They moved like witnesses. When Cedric entered the banquet hall, every noble rose, not from respect, from fear of what would be named next. The golden plate still lay ruined. The bitterroot tray sat blackened near the high table. The stolen hearth-salt glowed faintly beside Orenna's crescent spoon mark. Cedric stepped onto the dais, then stepped down from it. A murmur moved through the hall. He stood on the banquet floor instead, where the sacred wolves had carved the mark his court could not ignore. "This order is void," he said. He held up the blackened parchment. "My seal dismissed Orenna Hale from the Vael Moon Kitchen. My seal released sacred materials to Thorn hands. My seal turned balance into property and care into something rank could replace." Mirabel's face tightened. Cedric did not look away from the court. "Before every house that ate from this table, I name that act unlawful." The crescent spoon mark burned blue-white. Orenna stood near the servant arch, not beside the throne. Cedric continued. "The Moon Kitchen is sacred law space. Orenna Hale is keeper of the balance, not recalled by mercy, not restored by favor, and not owned by the crown. No hand of the Moon Kitchen may be removed, punished, purchased, or silenced by noble order." The recipe board glowed from below its light, rising through the floor like heat through bread. Mara began to cry quietly. Pelin took her hand. Tessa lifted her chin. The court saw them. That mattered almost as much as the law. Cedric turned toward Mirabel. "Lady Mirabel Thorn is stripped of household authority, feast command, and access to sacred stores. Master Alric Ven is barred from any Moon Kitchen rite until the named hands judge whether his knowledge was ignorance or willing harm." Alric bowed his head, shaking. Mirabel did not. "You give servants judgment over nobles now?" she asked. Orenna answered no. "We give harmed hands witness over harm." The largest sacred wolf stepped to Mirabel. She went very still. The beast did not bite. It lowered its head to the floor and exhaled over the stolen hearth-salt near her feet. The grains lifted, turning black where her sleeve had hidden them, then white again as they drifted back toward Orenna's mark. The hall understood. The theft had been named. The balance had returned to its own hands. Cedric faced the feast. Remove every poisoned plate. The kitchen hands moved. This time nobles stepped aside before being asked. No one laughed at smoke-stained sleeves. No one called common herbs crude. No one spoke of refinement while Mara carried ashcloth past pearl cuffs, while Pelin gathered poisoned wine, while Tessa took back moonroot from silver bowls that had never understood it. Orenna watched, without moving. Cedric came to her only after the work had begun. He stopped at a careful distance. "I remember the southern campaign," he said quietly. "Not all of it. Enough." Her eyes stayed on the hall. "You remembered when hunger returned?" "Yes. That is often when people remember care." The words cut him. He accepted them. "I will not ask you to feed me, because I am hungry." She looked at him then. His voice lowered. "May I come to the kitchen when I am ready to learn what I signed away?" For the first time that night, Orenna's expression changed. Not softness, not forgiveness. Something older and more difficult. Measured possibility. "You may come to the threshold," she said. "You may wait until invited." Cedric bowed his head. "I will." The sacred table wolves returned to the royal table only when Orenna lifted her spoon. Not before. Mara set ashcloth beneath the bowls. Pelin poured broth. Tessa broke moonroot by hand. Orenna scattered hearth-salt, last 3 grains for hunger, 3 for victory, 3 for the hands that brought both home. The wolves ate. A sound moved through the hall then. Not cheering, not triumph. Relief. The largest wolf finished first and lowered its head toward Orenna's wooden spoon. The court waited for some crown to appear, some hidden bloodline, some miracle that would make her value easier for noble minds to accept. None came. Only a woman with flour on her sleeve, smoke in her hair, and the lore of a kitchen finally named beneath the feast. Orenna Hale did not become royal that night. The royal house became fed because it remembered her. At dawn, the victory banners were lowered and rehung beside a new mark carved above the banquet doors, a crescent spoon crossed with 3 moons. Cedric stood beneath it without crown or command, while the first named hands passed into the moon kitchen under royal protection. Orenna walked last. At the threshold, she paused. Cedric did not follow. Not yet. The sacred wolves lay full and quiet beside the restored table, their silver eyes no longer hollow. The court had learned what splendor could not feed. Mirabel's polished order had collapsed beneath the weight of 1 stolen grain of salt. Orenna looked once at the banquet hall, then at the kitchen below. "The feast is over," she said. The moon kitchen bells answered her, warm and clear. "No," the bells seemed to say. "The work is named.